Good evening. It is my pleasure to come before you once again on behalf of the Cook County Bar Association, the world's oldest African American bar association, founded in 1914 here in the great city of Chicago, Illinois. The Cook County Bar Association is your bar association, and we're here to do what we can to help you. The call-in number is 312 738 1060. My co-host Mika Thompson, who actually produces this show, is running a little bit late, so we're gonna go ahead and start the program. Again, the call-in number is 312 738 1060. Today's topic is going to be landlord tenant. Okay, and I'm sure most of the people in our beauty audience are at one time being tenants. We all are landlords. We always want to encourage people to be home buyers, of course, but however, everyone cannot be a home buyer. So we do have a substantial amount of people that are tenants. I'm going to start out with some basic questions in terms of topics that we can discuss. Now, one thing, what people think, what are the responsibilities of a landlord? The responsibilities of the landlord is to maintain the property in such a manner that it doesn't have code violations, in such a manner that it's habitable, which means it's such a manner that you can live there. Okay? The landlord is responsible for maintenance. The landlord is responsible for repairs. And if you all that are property owners, you do know, or even homeowners, that things are going to break down. You have routine maintenance. That is fine. You have to do that. But from time to time, things are going to break down. So the landlord has a responsibility to make repairs. Caveat to landlords: you always want to try to make sure that your apartment building is in such a condition that you could live there. Also, another caveat, landlords, is this. Again, things happen. As we said earlier, you're responsible for routine maintenance, but also you're responsible for repairs. Nothing can, let me strike that. One of the most complaints that really lead to the landlord-tenant relationship going sour is that when things need to be repaired, that the landlord is slow to make the repairs. Those in the audience that are property managers, maybe for CHA or other management companies, there's a process. Usually you give a work order or work request, and then a property manager tries to have that work order or request done in a reasonable time. Now again, you want your tenants to be happy. So you want to be fair with them, meaning that if you get a repair request, even if it's just verbal, you want to act upon it promptly. Some things, depending upon the nature of the repair, you may not be able to do right away. However, it's been my experience, most people are reasonable. If you get in contact with the tenant and say, I have to order parts or such and such, or I have to line up a repairman to do it, usually most people will be satisfied with that. However, a major mistake the landlords do is just to take their time in terms of making repairs. Now, let's talk about the tenant responsibility. Okay, obviously the tenant responsibility is to pay the rent. Most leases have the rent being due on the first of the month. Most leases have the rent being late after the fifth of the month. Also, tenants had a responsibility to do their part in terms of maintaining the property. What we're talking about? Obviously, to use the property in its intended fashion. In other words, not running a business out of the property, trying to keep the property in good shape, so forth and so on. Those are some of the caveats that we want landlords to be aware of in terms of property management. We want to remind you that this is an interactive show, and we want you to be familiar with the Cook County Bar Association. The Cook County Bar Association's number is 312-630-1157. Again, that number is 312-630-1157. And our co-host has arrived.
Hi, how are you?
And I guess the helicopter got you in the nick of time.
Yes, it did. Thank you so much. My name is Attorney Mika Thompson. I am the co-host for today's show. I'm also the co-chair of the Cook County Bar Association's CAN TV committee. And you are here with our guest today, esteemed attorney Lewis Powell III. And we will be talking about real estate today. So, thank you, Attorney Powell, for continuing the hosting of this program. And right now, we'd like to proceed to some of our questions for you.
Well, Mika, we left off, we were discussing the responsibilities of the landlord and the tenant.
Okay.
And we were just talking about the responsibilities of the tenant. And I was telling our TV audience the main responsibility of the tenant is to pay the rent on time. Most leases have that the rent is due on the first of the month, considered late after the fifth of the month. Also, the tenants had a responsibility to utilize the property in the manner which is intended to. In other words, if it's residential, technically you should not be running a business out of the apartment. Also, the tenant has responsibility to do their part to keep the property sanitary, clean, so forth and so on. And that's where we're leaving off at.
Okay, so to follow up with that, are there any differences with responsibilities for landlord tenants when it's a condo, particularly when you're talking about the condo board bylaws?
We want to make sure the audience understands the distinction. Technically, now there are two ways to look at it. A condo owner is really the owner of the property, okay? And they're really not tenants, they're owners of the property, and the condo owner has the responsibility to make the payments of the assessments and also to use the property in its intended fashion. Mm-hmm. Now, caveat to you, a lot of condo owners eventually or very initially buy the property in order as an investment, meaning that they rent it out, which means this, that if you're renting your condo unit out to a person, that individual has to abide by the rules and regulations of the condo association. And you, as the owner of the property, if your tenant is not doing the things right in terms of what's called for in the bylaws and rules and regulations, that could cause you some problems. And what type of problems? Because I represent the condo associations. Mm-hmm. If you get a notice saying that you need to stop some misbehavior, or you get a notice in terms of that you maybe might have had the proper blinds in the windows, so forth and so on, you need to take the appropriate action within the time frame specified. Otherwise, you may be getting a fine.
And that is from the condo association.
That's from condo association. So bear in mind, individuals that own condos that are renting it out, you got to make sure that your tenants abide by the rules and regulations.
Okay, we're going to put a pin in that because I do want to get back to that issue, especially when you're talking about repairs and maintenance. It may be a little different when you have a condo association, but we have a caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes, and good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for picking up this call. I was listening a little. All landlords, we're not bad people. But you got some people are horrible. I have a few little properties. I try to take care of it. I like to get my tenants in there that I know that's going to take care of their property. If you take care of their property like it's your own, there's nothing in the world that I'm going to do, not to do, to help you. But again, you got people that will move in. They don't want to pay their rent. Then now you got a couple of holes 3 holes in one building. Now that means you're not getting no rent. You're not getting anything. I mean, everyone tries to. It's all about making money. That's the bottom line to it. But I found a way to get around it. You must do a thorough background check. We have some people used to, wherever you went, wherever you used to live, you go, and I'm talking about owners. Go to their properties where they used to live at. Ask. That's the best way to find out what tenants are you getting. But again, let me tell you something. It ain't about money. We make a few little dollars, but I care about my tenants. I care. Listen, you get the right people, they could die in my place because I'm going to do everything in the world to take care of you. But the ones that want to try to misuse you, there's where the problem at. Now you got to pay all this money to take them to court, and then they go still find a way to stay another 5 months. So that's another way. But it's just horrible. But this gentleman, I'm the one that called last week when I was asking you, young lady, about the lawyers in court. Because, see, we go into court sometimes, be 5 different lawyers, and you don't understand anything. Then you got to wait and find out, ask the judge, can he explain things? I've been through all of this. Let me tell you something. People, we all the same person in the tree. We trying to live together. We try to stay together. We don't want to hurt you or gouge you or anything like that. Just do what you're supposed to do. Pick up the paper. If you walk down the hall, you see paper, pick it up in your hand. You put garbage cans out so people can... Listen, don't let me get into it.
So are you looking for an attorney? Because you can go to the Cook County Bars and website.
I already have my management company. I got the attorneys and everything of that nature. Again, I'm just saying on the landlord side, please, tenants, just take care of your property. Only thing they have to do is make a call, at least to my management company. Just call, and it's going to be taken care of. Just do what you're supposed to do. Listen, thanks for taking this call. Let me get out there so I can hear a response. And I like your show. You have a real nice show. Thanks for taking the call.
Mika, I like to comment.
Okay.
You know, landlords. I lecture quite frequently. I know we can't plug or the organizations, but I lecture quite frequently, actually 2 to 3 times a month. Okay, the landlords and property managers. Landlords. The name of the game is this. You have to do a thorough background check.
That's true.
Okay, there's services available that will allow you to know whether or not your prospective tenant has ever been in eviction.
Right.
Now, again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to caution you that life happens. Life happens. Sometimes it doesn't take much for the average person to be put behind the 8th ball because of medical bills, loss of employment, sometimes and so forth and so on. Sometimes a person may be as a result of life happening in eviction court. However, I caution landlords to always do a background check so you know who you're dealing with.
Right.
And if you see some problems on there, it's nothing wrong with asking a person what happened.
Right.
Also, landlords, what you want to do, you always want to do not only a background check, you want to talk to the present landlord. Now, caveat to you, watch out if you call on a reference and the landlord says to you, well, it's our policy that we only tell another landlord that Mrs. X, our tenant, has been a tenant of ours from a certain time period. All right, be careful on that because sometimes we do a lot of evictions, okay? A lot of evictions, okay? Sometimes you settle cases and you settle in such a way that the court order is sealed, meaning that you don't know that they've been in eviction court.
Right.
And part of the settlement is that you do what is called a neutral reference. In other words, your problem tenant becomes somebody else's problem tenant. So you're just trying to get them out of there. But again, you want to do your background check. Ladies and gentlemen, you got to have your formula in terms of how much the person makes in terms of the gross and their expenses. It makes no sense to rent to anybody who on paper cannot afford your unit.
That's right.
So caveat, you got to do your background check.
Now the background, that's a little different than the credit check, right?
It's the same thing.
Okay,
It's pretty much the same thing. When I say background check,
Okay.
you're really trying to see if they've been in eviction court.
Okay.
Because a lot of people are credit challenged.
Right.
So I'm not quite sure that you want to have bad, use bad credit against somebody.
Okay.
That's a judgment call.
Okay.
But certainly you want to know whether your prospective tenant has been in eviction court 5 or 6 times, because that could be a problem.
Right.
Also, again, you want to call the previous landlords. Also, you want to go over their expenses and their gross.
Their income.
Because it makes no sense to rent to somebody who on paper cannot afford your property.
Afford your property. Okay, that's good advice. And in addition to what counsel is saying, the caller also, who is a landlord, reiterated that you need to do your background checks. So thank you, counsel. I also wanted to get back to what we were talking about with regards to the condo associations and their responsibilities. Now, there is a distinction between the type of responsibilities a condo owner has with regards to repairs and maintenance to a property, because you also have the condo association that has some similar duties. And whereas in a landlord tenant of a residential property, all the repairs pertaining to outside are, So would you explain that distinction?
Again, it's a case by case basis, because sometimes, depending upon the association, the vendor may have to be approved by the condo association, because they don't want anybody just walking in the building and working.
And making the repairs.
Because sometimes they may have some rules and regulations or requirements in terms of how a vendor is approved to work within the building. So you really have to, a lot of people don't, but you really have to read those condo bylaws. And if you have a question, you need to call up the management association.
So is that a responsibility of the condo owner inform the tenant?
That is the responsibility of the owner.
Okay. So see, those are different distinctions, because the tenant may, in a residential property, would think that they could just go in and make different repairs to the property, especially if it's something that they did. But like you said, the bylaws and different things may have something additional to say outside of the lease.
Exactly. So the name of that game is, those you all have condos who are renting it out, you want to give them a summary of the rules and regulations of the condo association to make sure that that they're using the unit appropriately. Caveat: even if it's a regular tenant, you never want your tenant to make repairs.
Gotcha.
If you do that, ladies and gentlemen, you are asking for it. Because when the relationship goes sour and they stop paying rent, one of the first things they'll say, "Well, Judge, I made repairs on the property, so I thought I could deduct it. That's why I didn't pay." So, landlords, that's a no-no.
Gotcha.
I don't care how well you know the person. I don't care how long they've been there. Do not let your tenants make repairs.
Okay. Well, that's good information from our esteemed counsel. So if you're listening, please call into the show. It's 312-738-1060. We want to hear your questions and your concerns. We're talking about real estate, landlord tenant. So please call in and let us know. Our next question is, if there are any occupants who are not party to the contract, what are their responsibilities?
Everybody in that apartment, whether they're unauthorized or authorized, are subject to the same rules and regulations of the lease, of the people who own the lease. Caveat: landlords, you have to do periodic inspections of your property. And under landlord-tenant ordinance, you give them a 48-hour notice. And you can come by and visit. You give them a time frame, you can come by and visit. Caveat: landlords, do not let the tenants change your locks. If they change your locks, you change it back. You give them a sharply worded letter, giving them 48-hour notice, saying, "I will be at the property during such and such a time frame. At that time, we will be doing an inspection. At that time, we will be changing the locks. And here is where you need to go to get your key. You have to be very careful in terms of changing the locks, because if you don't do it right, the tenants can sue you on the basis that they've been locked out. So
Gotcha.
again, landlords, and it happens a lot. You get comfortable with people, they change the locks. Do not let that happen. Caveat: if we said 48-hour notice in terms of inspection, so forth and so on, if it's emergency, gas is on, the water is running, it is any means necessary, meaning if I have to call you on the phone or to text you and say I'm coming by the key, the door to get in to turn the water off or to check the leaking stove, whatever, it is any means necessary. Seriously, text, call, whatever, fax, because the theory of it is that you don't have time for 24-hour notice. You have to get over to the property immediately to make sure that the whole building is not damaged.
Right. Right. So what about those situations where the door that is subject to a lock and key is near the furnace or the hot water tank? Does the tenant have a right to have that type of access to those
It
utilities?
depends. It depends, because again, if it's a typical basement and they have storage bins and there's understanding that the storage bin can be used by the tenant, then of course they'll have access to it. But if the basement is only acting as utility with the furnace, the water heater, so forth and so on, access to the meters, the electrical meters, then I cannot see a reason why a tenant would have access to that portion of the building.
Right. Okay, so again, call in 312-738-1060. We are talking about real estate with our esteemed attorney, Attorney Lewis Powell III. Our next question, we're going to go into consent when we're talking about the occupation of vacant properties. Common situation that is occurring around the country is the occupation of vacant properties without the owner's consent. So if a person is occupying your property or a landlord's property and they have not signed a lease, what's the term with that?
That is a squatter.
Okay.
Briefly, because we've dealt with this problem before. The problem is this, ladies and gentlemen. If you have vacant property, keep it secure, okay? Because people will move into your property. People will figure out a way to get electricity. Once someone moves into your property, you have to deal with them as if they were a tenant. What we're saying, you have to take them to court. You do not give them a 5-day notice. You do not give them a 30-day notice because they do not have a tenant relationship with you. You give them what is called a demand for immediate possession, and the very next day, you can file your lawsuit on the basis that these people never had any type of tenancy relationship with you. Therefore, they have no business being in your property, with the theory being that they are unauthorized occupants. Okay. And you have to move on it quickly. And this happens quite frequently in the city of Chicago. Also, calling the police is not going to do anything, because the police position is going to be, we do not know who's telling the truth. Okay. We do not know whether this person is in your property is lying or you're lying. In other words, it has to go through the eviction process. Illinois is not a self-help state.
Gotcha. Okay, we only have 1 minute left, so I'm going to leave that up to our esteemed attorney and colleague, Attorney Lewis Powell. So give us your final advice to our viewers or comments regarding real estate law pertaining to landlord-tenant.
Ladies and gentlemen, real estate is simple and sometimes complex. My favorite saying that keeps me motivated is, they're not making any more land. Let me repeat that. They're not making any more land. Land is a limited commodity with a value. I don't care where the property is at. It has some value. Caveat, as we said before, you have to make sure your property is in such a manner that you can live in it. And remember, this is a business. When you start getting emotional, you're asking for it. But real estate investment is very simple. This is a way for the average person, if they have the time and the desire, they can make some money.
Well, thank you. And again, this is the Cook County Bar Association's live on CAN TV show. Thank you so much, Attorney Lewis Powell, for your advice. And tune in next week at 6:30, and we'll have another attorney who will provide the viewing public with some information pertaining to legal issues facing the Chicago metropolitan area. Good night.